Say something? I don't know if I can hear you.
Bop, 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 bop.
I
Yeah,
wasn't sure if you were just
just mouthing to myself.
yeah, you were doing the fishy thing.
Bop, 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 bop. I should try to eat the cat.
Yeah, that does look like a very wise cat. I was actually just thinking about that before we got on. Looks like that cat has something that it wants to say. Maybe you
Yeah.
can channel the cat today during the
Meow,
podcast.
meow, 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 meow.
Oh, that's what I've been waiting for my whole life. Why didn't anyone tell me?
Yes.
You think
I'm
we're
like,
ever going to start a podcast where it's actually like
where,
serious? Where we're
where
like,
makes,
welcome to the Old Souls and Seekers podcast, where we discuss. Do you think we're ever going to do that? Or we're just going to jump into like nonsense for the first 30 seconds and hope that people stay with us?
I'd like to think that one day we'll be serious, but pretty much the beginning of all my conversations with all my friends and family just begin with utter nonsense for about 5 to 10 minutes before we find ground and semblance of ourselves. So probably
Uh,
not.
Probably not.
Yeah.
Oh, it's like in part of the interruption. They end it. We're like, we'll try to do better next time.
Yeah, exactly. It's just an interruption. That's all it is. All right.
Oh, well,
Well,
if you keep
well,
listening, then maybe you like this nonsensical banter about channeling cats and all that other stuff. In any event, eventually we get down into something, right?
it can't be all serious all the time, dude.
Yeah, that's right. That's so true. I was talking to someone the other day, and I could sense, like, in their responses how upset and angry they were. And then at some point, they said something like semi funny, and I was like, oh, they're back, because like the sense of humor is like the first thing to go when life starts beating you up.
That's
And
so
once you
true.
get a little sliver of it back, it's like, oh yes, they're in there somewhere,
Still there.
still there. Um, cool. So we're going to talk about how people can actually move much faster in their personal development with actual support. Is that
Shocking.
true, guy?
Shocking.
No, say it ain't so.
Mm-hmm.
Say it ain't so, because I have figured out how to do so many things on my own, and every time I talk to someone about doing something, they do it worse, not as good as me, and it just irritates me and frustrates me. So like, why even bother?
Praise be. Preach. Imagine that was our whole podcast. Like all we did was tell people to be viciously independent, not ever listen to anybody at all, and just be like, you are. That's it. You are the only answer. You are the only truth. You are the only reality. Everything else is
Go tell all your
bullshit.
friends.
Exactly. It was like we should just rebrand as like the full ego podcast. Like we just teach people how to only be in their ego. Talk about an about face on the industry.
That'd be funny.
Mm-hmm.
Detrimental, but funny.
Yeah. Go ahead. Tell them about things.
That could be like a good Halloween or April Fool's spoof. We should earmark that.
Like
we have now pivoted and created a new program.
Yeah.
Yeah, but something truly that we have witnessed time and time again, both for ourselves. Obviously, it started with ourselves, and then with clients and people that we work with, is this thing that I think personal development tends to isolate. And even though, you might go to a seminar or whatever it might be, but a lot of the actual work that we tend to do on ourselves is very solo, very independent. You're reading books by yourself, you're watching videos by yourself, your practices, you have like practices that are all around you and self. And then people come to us and they're like, well, I don't understand why I can't heal this thing, or I don't understand why this thing keeps coming back. And one of the first things that we look at is like, well, what are your daily practices? And I don't know that I've ever met anyone that when we first talked to them about daily practices, they were like, well, I sit in meditation with this group, or I have a daily practice where I actually sit in presence with someone. Like, I don't know that anyone outside of our community would ever and give that answer to others.
I've just noticed people. There must be some human conditioning here, right? Like it's like dieting or exercising. Like people rather do like a 30-day challenge.
Yeah.
lose 10 pounds, and then they kind of go back to their old habits instead of looking as a diet as like something you do for a short period of time. Is, when it's healthy, it's a lifestyle change.
Yeah.
You do the right thing 80-90% of the time, and you do the quote unquote wrong things, the defilement things, 10-20% of the time. And it's funny, when we think about our just overall well-being picture, people don't look to habituate it. Most of the time they look for intense experiences, 2-3 day pops. Hey, let's get that big pop and let's ride that wave, instead of using that pop to, hopefully, even with same thing with intensive diets like keto or paleo or whatever else people might be doing, or you know fasting or whatever it might be. Hopefully most people are using that as a springboard to change their habits and create daily practices and create that cultivation of well-being, not just the physical posturing. And I think spirituality is exactly the same. Either you're going to cultivate a practice and learn, right view, so to speak, and how to practice that on a daily basis, or you're going to try to be a weekend warrior, do your, 1 or 2 events a year, feel really good about yourself for a few weeks, maybe a few days, and then kind of slip back into old habits. And that's why support starts becoming so important, why we structure so much of our programs and community structures around these things. So yeah, I think it's definitely worth a deep dive on.
Yeah, you were mentioning diets, and I was even thinking about that. Like everything from intermittent fasting to keto to anything like that, there's always I'm going to call it a ramp up period. I don't know if they call it a ramp up period, but like the first 2 to 4 weeks of transitioning into any of those, it's not about the quick fix. In fact, like the first 2 weeks, most of the time when you go through these kind of lifestyle changes, are awful. Like people feel god awful. You can get flu-like symptoms, you can get sick, you can have pounding headaches. Like it's not fun because you're basically shifting the pattern of what your body has been doing for most of us, decades and decades. So, but in the long run, right, it's like you're recycling the system to start working on a different cycle, which will actually create longevity. And so spirituality, yeah, is actually very, very similar. And I think when
Well,
people look for the quick fix, feel good thing, it hardly ever lasts. Like I don't know if it ever lasts.
well, also on that note, right? Like when you, um, sorry, what did you just say about the quick fix there? I had a little thing I wanted to add in there.
I was saying that like in the beginning, it's just really
Oh
painful
yeah,
for those people.
yeah. I was gonna say, so the same thing, right? Like when you initially, like, let's say you want to get a kick coffee or take sugar out of your diet, like you said, you're gonna go through usually days of like some kind of headache or like physical discomfort in your body. But it also goes to show you how the system works. It's like when you take pause, when you give it that moment, you don't do the same negative habit over and over again. The first thing the body does is it's not like you're telling your body, I'm not going to have coffee today. It doesn't know to prepare itself for that release. But again, when you stop, and this is again spiritually equivalent or parallel for sure, when you stop, there's a release in the body.
Yeah.
And so there's something there to look at, and let's kind of expand and explore like this phenomenon of stopping, also resourcing, right? Because if you're going to, for example, do like a 10-day fast, right? When that's over, you also want to create a resource for the body, because not only
Right.
have you given it opportunity to cleanse itself, but you're also probably didn't feed the gut biome, for example. So you need to go get like, proper things to rebuild that bacteria up, because so in spirituality, it's the same. It's like if when you take pause, like things naturally arise in the system, they may feel like discomfort, but as those things release and come out of the system, what you're left with this feeling of well-being, of health, of stability,
Yeah.
all these things that a lot of people don't experience when they continue to do a lot of negative habits in their lives.
Yeah. So I want to just pivot it to, because I do find that that's kind of like true for everything. Even when you start working out, right? Like, and you get serious from I haven't really worked out to, okay, I'm going to take this seriously and work out. Man, those first 2, 3 weeks of working out are awful, awful, physically, emotionally, mentally. It's awful. Cause like, first of all, you realize how out of shape you are when you start to actually work out. So there's this like mental thing of like, wow, you just feel so disgusted with yourself then everything hurts. It doesn't matter what you work out, like for the next 2-3 days, just you're in so much pain, right? And it takes kind of the body to reawaken itself to this in like 3 weeks to go, oh, that. And so using that kind of same idea, you know, the work that we do here, we're not interested in giving you a quick fix. We talk about this all the time. Like, this work is not about making you feel good. And what we mean by that is like give you that high of like, oh my God, I'm right. I feel so good, because we know what that's inevitably going to lead to, which is a crash, and you're going to feel shitty. And then you're going to blame us and the technology and the work and all that kind of stuff, right? Inevitable. What we're more interested in is, can you actually learn a capacity to be with that which is? And the only way that we have seen that people can sustain that level of growth is first and foremost to deal with our inability to receive support. Like, I want you to consider that support, the energy of support, and we can talk about what that actually means, but the energy of support is one of the most resourcing things for the human body. And we have been so cut off from receiving this resource and medicine, if you will, that when it comes at you at the beginning, it's like that part of you has been so atrophied, you can't even see it. You can't even feel it. In fact, you will fight against it when the thing first starts. Like, we have people in our higher end programs, and they'll tell you, when Guy and I stand for them, or their coaches stand for them, or other people in the community or in their program stand for them while they're kind of in it, right? They don't notice it at first, but like, they do everything to resist that support. They will literally do the craziest, wonkiest things. I mean, Guy and I did it too. So to push away support. Because if we actually received support and actually had like an opening to allow it in, it would break up every story that you have about other people. And that story you've been holding on for so long that you don't want that story to be nullified, right? Like, it's so much easier to just live in that story because it's what you know, it's what you've learned to survive, it's what's safe. So that first like 2-3 weeks when we're talking about like muscle atrophy and it being painful and all that stuff, it's like, wow, can I actually open up to receive support from this other person? And that takes, I mean, listen, it took me way more than 3 weeks. It's taken me years and years and years to even perceive that it's there. And we'll talk about the magic of actually receiving it. But is there anything you want to throw in there about that?
Yes, I agree. If you call any part of our story into question, it calls the entire story into question, right? Like, it's
identity gets called into question.
Yeah, exactly. It's like there's a linchpin or a keystone, right, that's holding this whole support system up together. If one domino drops, then there's not only a question that's left in the system, but immediately it's like peeling down, like the unknown. Okay, well, if that's not true, then who am I? What am I? How do I respond to things? How do people know me in this world? And so inevitably, recently somebody showed me this map, and they kind of put this like arc over here of like, when you go through like a transformative process and then you like peek through the clouds, right? And so like every time you get a peak above the clouds, like above where your head was before, inevitably all the parts down here get agitated, right? Like, they have to, because like there's this new view, and that means that everything that these parts stand up on is now shaky, because this is not the view that they're used to. And
Wow.
so every time you go into higher states, it's going to bring up these old patterns and shake them up like that. And that's been a lot, I think, probably what I've been going through the last few months. I say it's like got a huge peak, like a really big view, and then everything that was stable, that felt good, even things that felt good, come into question, right? But there's always another level, and if this is true of any master or teacher that you will speak to, they'll say the moment there's complacency or you think that you've like arrived at something, that in itself becomes the ego. That in itself becomes the trap. Even really profound gifts that come online for people. If you get attached to them, they become the trap, right? And so there's always that game that we're all playing. It's like higher states, something's coming online, and the system kind of like naturally attaches to that as like this next point of safety, this next point of reference. And then, of course, you keep practicing, and it gets shakier, and the more foundation that you can set for yourself, the bigger of the experiences you can have, and the more the system can let go of. And so, there's this game of modulation keeps happening, but like our senses and what we have learned and what we teach over and over again is that for us it seems just clear that even if you take it at the level of biology and physicality, is that the human race and really all of nature is bound through cooperation. Like evolution happens through cooperation, and so we are biologically built for connection with others. We see this all the time. It's like the worst thing you can do to a human being is put them in isolation, in the holding tank by themselves. And we know that intuitively. We know that's the greatest punishment, and the reason for that is you're cutting them off from any sort of interaction with another human being. Look at homeless people on the streets, right? That speak to themselves, that develop schizophrenia or sociopathic tendencies, and start speaking to themselves because the system is that much longing for connection that will literally split the identity in two, and feign or pretend or have the illusion of having a conversation with somebody to the point where literally they are having it out loud because they're living in that. And so probably what we're calling schizophrenia is really a reaction to a lack of safety in the system and that deep of a desire to connect with another. That movie Castaway with
Tom Hanks.
with Tom Hanks and Wilson does such a good example of that, right? Like just such a lonely place that he literally created, a figment of his imagination around this ball. And that I watched that movie a few years ago, and I walked into, I think I've told you this once, like I walked into the room with my wife. My wife was doing laundry, and I started crying, and she's like, "Babe, what's wrong?" And I'm like, "I just saw Castaway," and I like bawl my eyes out when like Wilson fell in the water, because it doesn't matter. Like we attribute personification to anything in our lives, to things, to stuffed animals, to our pets, and it's like we literally longingly desire to connect. So if we make that part of our awareness practice, and it's not just like a connection from where a lot of people do it, which is their distortions, because a lot of us are like feeling scarce or disconnected, and then they feel unhealthy and they connect to other unhealthy people, or there's like not a healthy relationship between the two people, or not like an authentic connection between the two people. And so they're like actually reinvigorating their negative patterns because they're trying to connect from this unhealthy place with people that they've already created these patterns with, that loop them in their identity, loop them in their trauma, because that's really what our trauma does. Our trauma is not trying to hurt us over and over again. It keeps arising over and over again as a function of this mechanism that's trying to heal itself. Because the body isn't, real quick, the body is in self-repair all the time. All the time. It's constantly looking for ways to repair emotionally, physically, energetically. And so again, like if we want repair to happen in our system, we want to make sure that when we are connecting with systems, we're connecting with other healthy systems that know how to mirror energy and consciousness and awareness and presence back to us in a healthy way. And this mirroring actually gives a pathway for our system to exit the pattern and drop itself into a new awareness that it would not have been able to see otherwise. And in our opinion, Elon, correct me if I'm wrong, like we have not seen that happen for people really in any other way. Like there's only so much healing you can do on your own, but like to go all the way through with the healing for the parts that you literally don't know how to touch within yourself by yourself, because you just don't have that information in your system. There's a absolute requirement, not even like a recommendation, a requirement to connect with another system to see that aspect of yourself.
Yeah. So the what you're pointing to is like, I realize like people are actually looping and attracting to themselves a certain person that keeps in place the story that they have about being left alone, about being let down, about people not being there for them, like whatever it is. It's like because the part wants to be seen and witnessed and healed, it will literally keep calling to it the same people over and over and over. And one of the things that we have noticed time and time again is this being witnessed while we're going through that level of pain is not the word, discomfort, right? Like heartache, aloneness, whatever it is, like those are the moments that most of us lock ourselves away because it becomes not safe to be out there with people. So when someone leaves you, maybe it was a friend, a lover, whatever it might be, an opportunity, it doesn't matter. Like, but when you're left with that sinking feeling, the last thing you want to do is actually go out and reach out to someone because you've just been burned by someone. So it's like, it doesn't make sense to our system. It's like, I can't possibly have someone else tell me that they're not going to be there for me because that's really going to break me. And what we've noticed is that when we are witnessed in that discomfort by someone who can hold us in a way where they have a template that is both grounded, it has well-being, that's medicine for your system. Like the healing that you most want. And this is where people go so wrong. It's like when we're in those places, what do? We lock ourselves away. We literally take ourselves out of connection and we bury ourselves and we don't come out till we have put ourselves together. Right? Like I can't let people see me brokenhearted like this. I can't let people see me grieving like this. I can't let people see me in so much pain. Like they're all going to leave. Like then I'm going to lose everybody. When in those moments, and this is, I kind of always like flip the tables on people. It's like the times that you were able to be there like that for a friend, almost like when, like sometimes we're in these situations where we have no choice and like people are just around, maybe it's like a death or something and like people are around us. The times that you were able to be there like that for someone, wasn't it super rewarding for you? To be able to just sit there, even if you didn't know the thing to say or what to do, but you were simply there to just like hold them and be with them so they're not going through it alone. And you just let them know, like, I'm here. That's it. That's simple. I'm here for you. I know that we've all experienced it. So like, I know you guys can feel like what a gift that is to give to someone. And yet, so people are willing to do that for you, tons of them. And we don't trust that. And so every time you're going to go against your human nature, which is to isolate and bury yourself and do all of your, normal solo person things, if every time you actually caught yourself in that moment and go, you know what, I'm just going to reach out for help right now. Just literally the act of saying, I am going to reach out for help, like that act begins a completely different cycle in your life. Like that actually starts to create that pattern. And what we've noticed is when you sit with people who are able to hold and witness these parts that you're ashamed of or try to hide from others or whatever,
and receive you.
Yeah, and receive you. Your system basically drinks in this medicine. And it's not like a mom or dad support where you're like, I'm there for you, son. It's like a deeper energetic connection of being seen and held and witnessed. And it is the most uplifting, I don't know, there's it's almost like you find a piece of yourself that you never knew was in there when you're in these places of connection. And that piece of yourself that you find never goes away. That's the beauty. Like that's how this work lasts forever, because every time you take one of those steps, it is literally reprogramming yourself from the inside out without you having to think about it or understand it or anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I get the sense like when I said it's like that part of me just didn't know it was okay to be there and to be witnessed. And there's just something so powerful in that relief. And then I think where with the next part where I see people get stuck, and definitely took me some time to get with the program was this like does this happen to you often where you're in a process like you get into disassociation?
It doesn't. I don't have that experience. I was actually saying this on a call. Like, truly for me, before the pattern was, okay, I'm stuck. Let me figure it out, right? And I would like reach for books or notebooks or something to like find that, parable or whatever that's gonna be like, oh, that's the thing.
Yeah.
Then that stopped working. And then I went into, okay, I'm just gonna sit and meditate by myself. Like, I'm just gonna sit and meditate by myself. And that got me someplace, but also that has limitations. So now, honestly, like anytime I'm in one of these states and I feel out of balance, I feel a part kicking up, whatever, literally my go-to is like, who can I reach out to just sit with me? I don't want understanding, I don't want information, I don't want anything. I just want to be seen and presenced. And that's what kind of stops me, I guess, from staying in it long enough to go through the disassociation. It's really like it's so fast nowadays. Again, because it took me years to open up to the fact that like support is the greatest medicine. The thing that I've been waiting for like 20 years, all of a sudden it's like, holy shit, all I had to do was just like be with someone and sit with someone. I mean, not anyone, obviously, but like, we have amazing people around us. And yeah, so I don't quite get into that
Well,
disassociative
well, it makes
place.
sense. So I have a curiosity about that a bit, but it makes sense that what the system wants is the love of the mother
Yes.
and the protection of the father
Yeah.
in a
Or
tune in
approval.
right in an attuned way, right? So again, like if you guys are tracking this, like mom and dad, even if their bodies were there, most likely weren't attuned to you and like exactly the need you had as a child because they're not attuned. Like we have not been taught energetic attunement. And so there's a longing in the adult system as much as there is a longing in the child system because the system doesn't change how it works is to have that to find and then the system kind of down regulates and settles down and relaxes and the energy can move through the system and that's exactly how it works when we're born and 0 to 7 years old and the child's upset it needs the protection and the warmth of the mother right to downregulate and go through the experience energy that's his system. I guess my curiosity is I wonder if with attachment systems, with one being avoidant and one being anxious, if the way that the healing occurs is different because I do often find
Probably.
myself in a disassociative experience. And for me, like disassociation is more of a feeling. It's not like it doesn't feel like I'm not well, but it used to be like, oh, this is happening. And I used to kind of be like, is this okay? And I see a lot of our clients go through that too. They're like, oh my God, this experience is it feels like you're like coming out of your head basically like you're not in your body to some extent but it's like again that kind of makes sense that the body would do that because the identity is an association
Yeah.
right like you're associated with a part and so in order to get a clean look and for it to resolve your view literally has to disassociate and the part has to be seen not as part of you but as an object that you're viewing
Yeah.
like so, you're the subject watching the object and go read any spiritual book like that's the view right like you want to be able to get to that subjective objective view and not be directly integrated with the object and so for me oftentimes I'll get like balloon head right it almost feels like not a sick head I don't know how to describe it it's like I took a substance and I'm no longer here and so now I've had to like really learn to like lean into those experiences almost get excited about them because it's like an energy I've never experienced before so the first response my body has is this isn't okay
Mm.
like this it's like oh my god like I'm changing state why is that or something like that and I really mean it it feels like I've drank something or I've taken a
Wow.
pill of some kind and I'm literally going into an altered experience and so the body is like it's like anything you take if you've ever taken a substance your first time you're like oh shit is this okay is it going to kill me like you don't have any way to regulate the system because you have no point of relativity with this thing and so I've just had to kind of like trust that my body is not hurting me. It knows what it's doing. Like I'm just sitting here, all that kind of stuff. And even now that regularly happens when I meditate. Like I'll go into all sorts of different states and with a curiosity, I'm like, oh, this is interesting. And I think like slowly I'm noticing that I'm entering states of like samadhi, which is just like, I'm sure you experience this too, like blissful mental and body sensations. And then there's, okay, well, now that that's here, don't get attached to that, and don't create more effort in trying to get here. It's like it never happens with an agenda, ever. It only happens when I'm agendaless. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what I've been noticing recently, and we do, for those that are maybe new to us, a lot of our work is focused on, we have group field work, meaning like you sit in group in connection, plus you have one-on-one connection. So we're actually giving people both, where you have both, because what we realize is certain traumas, like very small amount of trauma that was created in your life, if any, really was created when you were in a room by yourself, right? You're not like inflicting trauma on yourself, right? So trauma happened either in a one-on-one, like one to you, or group to you. And so the healing of these traumas also have to be met in the way that they were created, right? So if it was a group trauma, then you sitting even in one-on-one, as good as that might be, is not going to heal that all the way through. Like, you want the healing field of the group. And something that I've noticed, the more I've opened to support of late, is this ability to feel the group field in a way that I'd never been able to feel it before. And another thing that has become very cool, and this has really only happened in the last like few months, is I used to drop into these states when we would sit in like a group field, and I would only realize like how far I'd kind of gone down that energetic place as I was coming up, right? Because like sometimes when you like are coming out of it, you can kind of like feel the layers that you've been through, and you're like, wow, where the fuck was I, right? Which is awesome. I mean, it's a really cool feeling to have that, because you're like, wow, like I was not on this planet, you know? Now what's been happening that's really cool, it's like I'm actually witnessing the levels as I'm going through them down. So I will like feel a settling, and it's kind of this like layer. And then as I'm witnessing the layer, it like opens up, and I feel something shift, and it like drops into another layer. But I'm actually witnessing the sitting, the dropping, the sitting, the dropping, the sitting, the dropping. And I can actually have witness in the place, where we've been kind of taught as like this awake, aware place. And it honestly, I sit sometimes and I just kind of like, not with my head moving, but like in my mind's eye, I look around the space that I'm at, and I'm like, wow, this is so cool. Like, it's like blows my mind. And again, it all comes back to, I would have never known any of this, or how to do any of this, or practice any of this, if I wasn't sitting with practitioners who had gone there before me. Like, your body doesn't have a template of what that feels like, looks like. It's like, take me there. Take you where? Right? Like, it has no GPS. And so when we hire people, Guy and I, to sit with them, and these people have been working at this for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, right? Like, it's not that they need to necessarily say anything. It's just that sitting in that connection, our system, kind of like a child learns through mirror neurons, right? It's not, they don't learn what you tell them. They learn what they see you doing.
What they feel you doing, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is the same thing. Like, our system is also, when it sits next to someone, it kind of like tests and studies and this and that. And the more you sit with someone, the more safety you have around their system, the more you can lean in and learn from that system. And the more your system just basically, through osmosis, if you will, like, takes on these things, and it goes there. And it's the easiest, simplest, most profound way to have enlightened experiences, versus just like talking about them and trying to figure out how to get there.
It's really about the sit, like It'd be very simple to create a program and be like, just sit here with me. But it's funny because Vipassana too, it's like the Buddha was like, just sit here and watch your breath.
Yep.
Stop making it more complicated than that. It's like focus the mind, sit here. And so if we like really learned, I think the one caveat here is like the quality really matters, right? Like if again, like as an example, if mom and dad were there for you, like physically, but you still have all these like ruptures and traumas, like the reason for that is they weren't in attunement.
Yeah.
So being with an attuned person is really critical to this process because there's a quality of presence that you're looking for. And if somebody hasn't been trained in that quality of presence, then just having a body there is useful when you're feeling traumatic. Don't get me wrong, like the physical body probably feels good if that's how your system is organized. Like for me, like I really there's a specific way like my system needs it. Like if you sit next to me and your energy is really intense, or like you if almost want to get physical, contact with me because that's how your system is organized, right? Like a good example is like love languages. Like we all have different ways that we show our appreciation and love. So for one person's gift giving, like for me, like it's never how I think first. Like I'm all acknowledgements and this and that. Like that's what really matters to me. And so a person that gives me a gift, that might actually make my system feel off. So for some people, it's like they really want touch when they're getting presents. Other people, they're like, you better just stay the fuck back. And so if you don't know those attunements for a system and you can't track or feel those things, then you really may not help the person. And they may just be like, oh, that was a waste of time. I don't want to sit here with this person. I don't want to be doing this, instead of actually cultivating that ground in the system. So those are all like the little things, but it's funny because the subtle things, like in every great art of mastery, right? Like even in diet, we always say this, like losing weight is not a secret, even though there's $1 trillion industry around it. Eat right and do some exercise and you're going to lose weight. You're going to be healthy. But for people who like have in-depth 20, 30 years of practice in nutrition, health, they find these really nuanced things in there that take a really long time looking at the same thing to notice and realize those things. And they're so subtle that your average person just looking at that equation would never notice those things. I'm sure it's in mathematics and physics and anything that's worth putting your time into. Music, right? Like little subtle things are all the things that make the difference. And that's ultimately like why you go get a coach, because they're somebody who's like, we've invested 20 years and well over $1 million. Like we've learned really subtle things and those subtle things are really what make the quality of our lives better on a day-to-day basis, instead of like the big huge insights that do come. But like wisdom is not a function of something you read in a book. That's understanding. Wisdom is something that comes out of your direct experience. And so ultimately, like if you really want to be a wise person, you gotta put in the time and you gotta cultivate it. And of course, if you have people around you that have done that work, that's what a coach is for, is to cultivate that work much, much faster. Like Elon and I don't intend that people who work with us get to the same place in 20 years. We intend that they get to the same place in 12 months, 24 months, something like that. And then it's like, okay, now let the games begin. But it's like, ultimately, it's like, we don't know where anybody's journey or path is supposed to take them. What we're here for is to help them and guide them towards creating really solid foundation and cultivation in their practice. But once you have that, you can take on the world. Like you can take on anything, and your own experiences and your own soul and your own energy and your own templates are going to be the guiding force of, what you get to experience in this world, how you get to heal, and what gifts you get to bring through. And there is some, even though we're all the same and part of the same collective energy, there is a individuation in terms of how those gifts come online. And for each person, that's what makes it so special, is like we have our own templates, and that's our gift to bring to the world. But if we don't have that foundation, it becomes like too scary to even bring it forward. And
yeah, it's funny you were mentioning Buddha, and I was like, yeah, even in all those texts that you read, like people would approach the Buddha, right? And they would sit with him or other masters, and those masters would give them pointers and things to notice or focus on or shift awareness to. And like, it wasn't the same training for every single person, right? Because like a certain person gets stuck here and another one gets stuck here. And so, I mean, Guy and I have never, ever believed in a one size fits all formula, right? And just whether we were teaching people how to build businesses, where we were teaching people how to market on Facebook, and whether we were doing spirituality. Like, this stuff is really customized and personal. And if you want to learn and experience that, like, there's only one way to do it. And that is really through putting yourself in places that you can actually soak in that type of field and energy. So if you're listening to this, we have an event coming up here in, well, I don't know when you'll be listening to this, but November 13th, 14th is our next live event. It's actually the last 2-day live event that we'll be hosting this year. After that event, we'll kind of be going on a hiatus for the remainder of the year. So I love that, what's coming through is like, everyone always gets to the new year and they're like, okay, now I'm going to go and create all those things. But it's like, what about the energy that you are completing this year with? What about having tools that are ready to be deployed in that new year? Like, nothing magical is going to happen January when you write down your 5 goals and then look at them 11 and a half months later and go, fuck, I didn't do that again. Right? So if you're looking for that kind of structure, it's beginning of November. So we'd still have, let's say, about 8 weeks roughly, right? If you really want to take a deep dive, we have our level 1 program. This is level 1 of our emotional intelligence mastery program. When you register for the level 1 program, you actually get a free ticket to our live event, which is $297. Okay. You get that for free. So for an additional $200 over that price, so for $497, we have a program where you can go through 6 different modules and actually have a coach work with you for the next 6 weeks. Plus, you still get to come to the live event, either this one or one next year, whatever works for you, right? The dollar to weight ratio of something like this is just
Dollar to value. DTV.
Dollar is beyond comprehension. Like, it really is out of this world. We used to sell just the level 1 program for $4,500 on its own. Okay. Now here's the thing. We don't allow anyone into that program. Okay. You must apply to the program because we are trying to figure out where you are on your path, and A, if this program is the right fit for you, first and foremost, and B, if we can support you to have the results that you actually want, right? Like, what are your long-term goals? What are your short-term goals? What's the thing that you're struggling most with right now? So you're going to fill out a quick questionnaire. You're going to get on a quick call with one of our coaches, and they're going to be basically ask you a bunch of questions and just make sure that you're a fit to be in that program. If you are, you'll be able to register. And again, for the price to have 6 weeks of live coaching, plus being an amazing group, getting the support and everything that we're talking about, and on top of it, get a free ticket for $297. Like, give yourself this gift, and if you've found that you resonate with the conversation and you've struggled and you've gotten stuck kind of like where we've been pointing, maybe it's just time to try something new, right? And it doesn't hurt to apply. You can figure out if this is a fit for you and then just take it from there. And we'd love to see you in our community, exploring, experiencing, inquiring. So if there's anything ever that we can do to support you, please don't hesitate to ask. And anything else you want to add there?
No, perfect. Love you guys. We'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.
Oh, I didn't say the link. You put it up, but we didn't actually say it.
I did. Yeah. So the application link is soulsandseekers.com/apply. And again, that's applying for our level 1 mindset and emotional mastery that Elon just laid out for you guys. Yeah.
soulsandseekers.com/apply.
There you go. All right, guys. Love you very much. We'll see you next time.